Before we start, we would like to thank you all for attending our first 2017 Greater Cleveland Drug Court Community Symposium. First off, we'll have Mr. Henderson to come up and to recite the Serenity Prayer, and then we'll get started. We'll have a welcome from the Reverend Dr. Rodney Thomas after Mr. Henderson. Thanks.
Good evening. Could we all stand, please? May we have a moment of silence for those who have gone on before us. Thank you. The first word of the Serenity Prayer: God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Let me welcome you to our facilities here at Imani Temple Ministries, and we welcome the Greater Cleveland Drug Court Symposium and sessions here on our campus. We're very happy to welcome you, as well as not just myself as pastor, but also Judge Moore, who is a member of our congregation, and we're happy to partnership in collaboration with her in this drug court. So be at home, and we're thankful to have you here with us and this distinguished panel. Let's give this panel a wonderful round of applause.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I am so pleased to see such a nice crowd. That means this is important. Well, first, I do want to thank Reverend Thomas for hosting this. We really appreciate this. I love this church. It's a great facility, and we welcome you here. What I wanted to do today is basically have a long-awaited, much-needed conversation about those other drugs. Now, there's a lot of talk, as you may know, about opiates and heroin and all those, and they're very, very important, and not to make light of those, but there are a lot of other people in our community who are afflicted with other types of addictions, and those need to be talked about. So I wanted to bring that conversation forward so that we can see what we can do to make some more get some more resources, to make people aware that there are still a lot of other people out there hurting. And I know heroin is a drug. You don't play with that heroin. A lot of people have died from heroin. A lot of people in our drug court have died from heroin. We have people who OD all the time. And we do a good job. I think we do a wonderful job helping people and getting people to a state of sobriety, and we've got the numbers to back that up. And I think that our drug court, well, I know that our drug court is 90% successful, and compare that to the national average, which is 67%. So we do pretty well. We do pretty well. But there are a lot of other people out there who are not getting the resources that we need, and even though opiates and heroin and fentanyl, that will kill you quickly. But things like cocaine and alcohol kill you slowly. And it kills communities, kills families, it kills whole cities. And we don't want to get away from that. We want people to remember that there are a lot of people out there who have other problems, and we don't want that to fade into the background. So that's the conversation we would like to have today. All addiction is terrible. All the drugs are terrible, and we just want to make sure that we're talking about all of them. So I welcome, and I hope you find this interesting and educational.
Good evening. I am Councilman Jeff Johnson from the northeast part of Cleveland, which is the Glenville, Collinwood, Nottingham Village area, as well as St. Clair Superior and Euclid Park area. I am one of the moderators, as well as an individual who, from my perspective, has been exposed to these issues on a daily basis. I remember when I first became a councilman in 1984, crack hit Cleveland around 1985. And all bets was off. It changed. The violence that came with it, as well as the addiction level. that came with it. And as the judge has said, we continue to grapple with crack and the problems associated with it, as well as what is put in with it. And of course, heroin is something every day I get calls about, and opiates and the continual problem there. So this is a timely discussion, and I am delighted to have been asked to be a moderator with this. My colleague has asked me to introduce herself, so when she's ready to get to the podium, she'll be ready, but she doesn't want to do remarks. She just got some hip surgery, but we are bringing with this top crew here, former Judge Una Keenan, I always call her Una Keenan, who is also president of the East Cleveland School Board. She has history. Those of you who know Judge Keenan's history, we know that all of you know that we've brought the right person here. And when it comes to the purpose, I think Judge Lauren Moore handled the purpose. And so I think we can go right to Wallace Green and as I see next, the video presentation. Am I right? Am I correct to say that? Because Lauren handled the purpose, and so we'll move right into the video presentation. Yes, sir.
Good evening. We've got a short video presentation, and we're going to talk about drug court and the criminal justice system, because as you know, when it comes to the criminal justice system, there's a lot going on. There's a lot to navigate, and there's a lot going on. And part of what we do in Cleveland Municipal Court is we try to address the issues as humanely and fairly as we can. We have a lot of proactive programs. We've got drug court, VA drug court, mental health court, human trafficking court, and recovery court. We also have programs that address domestic violence, curfew, our COPS program, and you see it every day in the news, people interacting with cops that doesn't turn out well. Well, we have a program for that. We also have a program of how to interact with the community in and of itself. The NADCP in 2001 came out with a proclamation. All drug courts have an obligation to take action to prevent or correct any racial or ethnic disparity. They've done it on a national level, and we're doing that on a local level. And as you can see, in terms of African Americans, we're overrepresented in the criminal justice system. Nas said it best in 2008. Everybody sounds the same, commercialized the game, and forgot where it started, so here we gather for the dearly departed. Hip-hop is dead. You know, hip-hop, when I was coming up, used to be a very positive and proactive thing. And with gangster rap, it really changed the mood and the setting. And it introduced a whole new set of values. Out the window went family, education, career, spirituality, security, freedom, health, and property, and ushered in a whole new set of values. Tennis shoes, cars, clothes, drinking and drugging, tattoos, jewelry, hitting the lick, crime. We see it every day in the criminal justice system. What you have to understand is that in actuality, hip-hop is not a culture at all. See, a culture is something that nurtures, strengthens, and ensures the positive progress and development of its people. And hip-hop does not do that, not anymore. So what is hip-hop? Hip-hop in actuality is a business that masquerades itself as a culture and gets a lot of people caught up. Rather than manhood being based on those positive values that I listed, manhood is based on these rituals in the community. First time you had sex, first drink, first drug, getting your license, first ink, doing your first bit, and having your first child. And all this is dysfunction. And you got to understand, it's a lot of funds in dysfunction, okay? And that's going to other people. Baby Boy exemplified this in the movie. And it's about a guy who kind of really refuses to grow up. In the beginning scene, you have him as a full-grown man in the womb. Because see, rather than to grow up, you've got kids that are really trying to get back up in that womb. And their focus is, as long as they're looking good, got something to drink, something to smoke, something to hustle, something to sex, money to blast, guys to hang with, car to drive, music to blast, everything's all right in their world, okay? They're asleep. And when that happens, you wind up in the criminal justice system. And the average female in this culture is raising 2 boys, her man and their child, okay? So we try to address these issues. You have to man up. You're a male by birth. You are an adult by age, but you are a man by choice. Focuses on manhood because you got to understand, women, they're important, but men, when they're not doing what they should be doing, they become extremely destructive. And that's why it's very important to keep them on point. The botched war on drugs has created this broken criminal justice system that we're living in now, as beautifully documented in the film, The House I Live In.
America's public enemy #1 is drug abuse. We intend to end the drug menace and to eliminate this dark, evil enemy within. Put him away. Please rise, and you are out. I have a life of 30 sentence, 20 years for drug trafficking. I have bought without parole for 3 ounces of methamphetamine. Of the 2,600 people I've sent to federal prison, I've seen 3 or 4 kingpins. We're incarcerating poor people who are drug addicts.
You're watching poor, uneducated people be fed into a machine like meat to make sausage.
Law enforcement agents get rewarded in cash for the sheer numbers of drug arrests.
Money's ours now. That's my money now.
The scale is unbelievable. Nobody tells the population that we that all sorts of people get a financial interest.
These are gun manufacturers, healthcare providers, phone companies.
You build a better, they build a better. You'll get rich, and we'll get rich, and we'll all be rich together.
What happens when you take large numbers of people, remove them from their neighborhoods, their families? What does this do to the broader community?
You have to understand the war on drugs has never been about drugs.
The drug war is a holocaust in slow motion.
The house I live in. You have to understand, we're 4% of the world's population, and we jail more people in prison than China and Russia combined. Understand that. In this, what they did was they took a stock in this movie. They said, here are the facts on the war on drugs. It's 40 years old, starting in 1972. We've spent over $1 trillion with the T, $1 trillion on this war. We've arrested millions of low-end offenders and felons, very few kingpins. 40 years later, drugs are plentiful, more potent, and easy to obtain as ever before, with some of them becoming legal. What have we done for the past 40 years? We victimized poor, uneducated, and mentally ill people. And we saw the 100-to-1 crack cocaine laws and how that went, and that's what really built the prison systems up. And it's put billions behind bars. This is a multi-billion-dollar business. After the crack epidemic, we know where the emphasis needs to be put. The client sees himself as a victim, maybe of society or his environment. Treatment sees the client as being sick, and the criminal justice sees the client as being a criminal. Well, we know now that through the crack epidemic that we cannot arrest our way out of this problem, that the emphasis needs to be put with treatment because the individual is sick. And if you don't treat them, you can put them in jail, and when they come out, they're still going to be sick. The heroin epidemic versus the crack epidemic. Well, now we know that we need to treat this as a public health problem as opposed to a public safety problem. But here's the thing. The hip-hop culture is seriously lagging behind because the hip-hop culture has really become the advertising arm of the prison industrial complex. So if you do like they say in the lyrics, it's going to put you there, and we've got the statistics to prove it. And an excellent documentary was put together by Hip Hop InfoWars, and they break it down excellently.
Self-proclaimed hood billionaire Rick Ross dropped his 7th studio album today. Now, the Rick Ross of 2014 is a little bit more known for his recent weight loss and fondness for pears, yet he still feels that he's got to keep up this image of being the friendly neighborhood drug dealer. And that is the hip-hop psyop. How else will the establishment prime the youth for a life that leads to prison without selling them on the gangster lifestyle? He is priming the youth for a life in prison, and he's laughing all the way to the bank. Here is what the real Rick Ross has to say to this name-jacking rapper.
William Roberts, a.k.a. Rick Ross, who's using my name, I'm inviting you in to come with me. Let's fight this culture. Let's fight this penitentiary culture that hip-hop has spread.
Well, we all know that the music industry is a machine, a giant machine. 90% of what Americans read, watch, and listen to is controlled by just 6 media corporations. Those media companies own and control all of the channels through which an artist becomes popular. They own the networks, the radio stations, the award shows, the movie studios, the magazines, the cable channels. Without any regard to their actual talent, a person can be launched into superstardom overnight. And here's another shocking truth. The people who own all of the media are the same people who own all of the private prisons.
If you missed that,
the people who own all of the media are the same people who own all of the
if you missed it again,
the people who own all of the media are the same people who own all of the private prisons. The prison industrial complex is a booming industry, and just like any industry that needs a constant supply of raw materials to keep up with demand, prisons need prisoners. RapRehab.com has done some really great legwork exposing the facts about hip-hop and prison for profit. According to public analysis from Bloomberg, the largest holder in Corrections Corporation of America is Vanguard Group, Inc. Vanguard is the 3rd largest holder in both Viacom and Time Warner. Now, these people are using hip-hop to generate a constant stream of new inmates to keep business booming. These are the real hood billionaires.
So understand that. The way that this thing works and the way that it kind of feeds into the system. So we have some really great positive rappers. Understand that they're out there, but you're not going to hear them. Okay, because when it's that small in terms of 6 corporations, they're going to shape what you're going to look like before you get into that space. Understand that. And also, they said 6. That was back in 2011. You've got 2 other entries into the player, and that's Time Warner with Charter Communication, who bought out Bright House and became Spectrum. And you see them now, they are doing a very, very aggressive campaign. And AT&T bought DirecTV. So part of this that we're dealing with is we have a program called HEAT, which is a cognitive behavioral therapy group, which stands for Habilitation, Education, Accountability Therapy. It's a 9-month program. It is sponsored by these criminal justice associations, and it's also sponsored in 6 states. It targets African American males between 18 to 29, and we've increased that to 35. And believe it or not, we're having trouble finding people. We know they're out there, but once again, you know, as part of what we need to do is figure out what's going on and to get these folks in so we can get them some help. Once again, you know, heroin is not the only thing out there. There are 3 sections. It focuses on self, family, and community, and the binding principle of spirituality. It covers topics that are germane to this clientele, such as black manhood, hustling as a lifestyle, and you really start to understand that there's a high cost of low living. The influence of commercial hip-hop, absentee father becoming an involved father, breaking the cycle of generational incarceration, which we see a lot of in the African American community. And community involvement, once again, giving back. Through the efforts of our programming, we, as a court, are able to help the addict, the mentally ill, irresponsible adults, women caught up in human trafficking, domestic violence offenders who lack interpersonal skills. And when we help those people, guess what? We can save valuable jail space for actual criminals. How about that? I want to appreciate you for coming, and stay tuned for the rest of the program. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Una Keenan, the other half of the moderators. Having been a municipal judge in East Cleveland for 20 years and as president of the school board for 10 years, I'm very close to what is going on when we talk about the drug culture. At this time, I would like to introduce the panel. The Honorable Lauren Moore, that you've already met. The Honorable Jimmy L. Jackson, Jr., Cleveland Municipal Court. The Honorable Joan C. Sonnenberg, Recovery Court Judge of Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court. Dr. Margaret Boham, am I pronouncing that right? PhD, Senior Research Associate, Case Western Reserve University. Mr. Wallace Green, whom you've met. Meet him again. Dr. Darrell D. Jackson, PhD. Drug Court Program Coordinator, Cleveland Municipal Court. Dr. Martina Moore, PhD. President and CEO, Moore Counseling and Mediation Services. Attorney Antonio Nicholson, Esquire. Assistant Cuyahoga County Public Defender. Attorney Michael O. O'Malley, Esquire, Cuyahoga County Prosecutor. And you've met Reverend Dr. Rodney Thomas, Senior Pastor of Imani Temple Ministries. That, ladies and gentlemen, is our panel for tonight. Mr. Johnson.
Let's stay up.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to start conversating at this community conversation. We're now going to bring in the questions that are in this container, as well as whatever is follow-up. There is no names on these questions, so we're not going to have everyone answer every question. That would take a long time. So we're going to pick and choose. But let me acknowledge, though, I think it's appropriate. I see a couple of judges. All the judges in the audience, please stand. I know I see at least two of them here. All right. Are there any other elected officials in the room? I just want to make sure that, So this is a treatment question, and let me start it off by asking Dr. Bachman. I just pulled you out of the hat, and then I want Dr. Moore to follow up. From your standpoint of being a senior research associate at my alma mater, Case Western, that's probably why I called you, because I'm a graduate of Case. How long does it take to conquer crack cocaine usage? Are you exposed to that type of question? Go ahead.
Okay.
You can grab the mic and hold it if it's more convenient. If you.
To be honest, when we look at addiction in research and in applied programming and things like drug court, the actual drug of choice is often secondary to the severity. So the level of care someone would receive, regardless if it's an opioid use disordered, crack cocaine, alcoholic, if they need to be in a residential facility, being removed from the community to live somewhere, versus living in the community and attending treatment 3 hours, 3 days a week, is kind of based on what the individual needs. What we do know is severe and moderate addiction requires long-term supportive services, substance use treatment, mental health treatment. They need recovery environment support. And one quick thing before I let Dr. Moore speak, I have 440 individuals in 4 different courts that I am studying. Some of these programs are targeting opioid users, but my point is, when we ask them the first time we meet them, what drugs did you use in the past 30 days? Almost 40% report using cocaine or crack. So regardless of what's on the news every night, addiction is addiction, and we see it with all substances.
Dr. Moore.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, sure. How long does it take to conquer crack cocaine usage?
So we could never quantify that and say how long it would take to conquer it. For each individual, it's a different process. But as Dr. Bachman said, we do realize that we need to put in place longer-term treatment efforts as well as more intense therapy, including follow-through for years with things such as recovery housing, transitional housing, and case management services and spirituality and supportive services. What we do now know, and ASAM, the Addiction Science and Medical Group, have just released a new study, and one of the things that they reported was that we can no longer go by the basic number for any group of people suffering from addiction. That we now know that it takes much longer, and we have to push insurance companies as well as our agencies to provide services much longer and really be more empathetic and patient with the population. So we're realizing that it's going to take a while, and it's going to take a lot of efforts, and sometimes that means that relapse over and over may be a part of that process.
Would anyone else like to say anything in regards to that? Judge Sinneberg?
Sure. Repeat the question. Or what lessons?
This one, the same question.
What lessons did we learn during a crack epidemic that we can apply to heroin?
Okay, that's our new question.
Okay, thank you. Well, and thank you so much for organizing this wonderful event. It's fantastic. You know, what have we learned? This is a disease, and what we've learned is that we seem to pay attention to what's killing people. But I will tell you something. We have to approach this with not just treatment, but also a heart. And every single person here can look out for somebody in their community that could use a hand. And if something's going on with addiction, you can be sure that if that person's a parent, they're probably having trouble keeping their kids, they're probably having trouble keeping their house, keeping a job, staying in a relationship. So we have to come in a way of helping people holistically. And I think what we have learned is that everybody's important. Okay, people are inherently born good. This is a disease, and recovery does work. So we know the sky is falling, but we know that recovery works and there's hope out there. And so we have got to approach this with hope and compassion in our hearts, and we can't get mad at people for being sick. We have to open up our hearts and try to help. We can get frustrated, but we can't get mad. So I think that that's what we have learned. We're in this together. And if somebody's affected by addiction, you can bet that every person that loves them and that they love is affected by it too. It's a family disease.
Mind you, we're just pulling these questions out of the hat. So the next question, Dr. Jackson. Is there anything that can be done for the black community now to make up for the poor way that the crack epidemic was handled?
Well, for starters, the immediate thing that I could think of is currently what we're doing now is kind of addressing the issue, calling a spade, calling the issue out as it is what it is. So currently, right now, what we're doing is we're addressing the issue that crack still exists in our community. Crack still exists in our family. Crack still exists in our churches. So we have to address the issue and confront it head on, and that's how we're going to deal with it from this point forward.
Can I just follow up with the question of why aren't people on crack getting the same kind of treatment as those on heroin?
Well, that would be something that you would have to start asking the federal government. I don't have the answers to that, but what I can say is that when I started working in drug court back in 2009, is that African Americans, or let's say individuals who were diagnosed with the crack cocaine clinical diagnosis, were receiving a 45 to 90-day residential stay, versus now they're getting IOP treatment, which is totally different in a matter of about, what, 7 years or 7, 8 years. And I've seen that shift just by working in the current position that I'm working in now.
Judge Moore?
Yes, I would like to say in order to remediate the problems of the last 10, 15 years where people who were addicted to crack cocaine were treated criminally as opposed to medically, with the help of our county prosecutor, and he is on board with this, we have relaxed the guidelines of letting people get into drug court. And so once upon a time, if you had like more than 1 or 2 convictions, they would say you were ineligible. So we have like 10 or 15 years of people being on crack cocaine, and they could have racked up 2, 3, 10, a dozen, 20 convictions. And so now they'll say, oh, they're ineligible for drug court because they have too many convictions. And so, and I can let Mr. O'Malley speak, but we appreciate the fact that they are loosening those guidelines so that we can ignore those convictions, because they got them because they were sick and it was not recognized as a sickness. And so now we are putting them in drug court regardless of how many convictions they have.
And Judge Moore, to add is that, they are loosening the guidelines, but everyone has to buy into the philosophy of drug court. So even though the guidelines are loosened, Mr. O'Malley may say, okay, loosen the guidelines, but if everyone is not buying into the philosophy of, rehabilitation instead of incarceration, then it doesn't matter.
Prosecutor O'Malley?
Thank you. As Judge Moore has indicated, I have certainly advocated for loosening the guidelines. I've also advocated for having a high-risk drug court, because currently if you're convicted of a violent felony in the past, you will not be admitted. And I think to get an individual on the road to recovery, regardless of their past criminal history, is a victory. And we need to get people out of the cycle of drugs and criminal activity, and that starts with getting people on the road to recovery. And any human being that we can help down that road, I think we should try to help.
If I could just
Absolutely.
add to that. We just talked about a program that we have, a great program, HEAT, that is underpopulated. So we know that those addicts are out there. We know that they're there. But, there's some barriers to getting them into the program. And I'm not sure where that's happening, but at the same time, I think that, that's something that probably some of the people on this panel need to really take a serious look at. Because once again, the African-American community has been crippled, for the past, 15, 20 years through the poor handling of addiction. And I think that, and the question was asking, what can we do to make up? And I think part of that is to start to service the people in a humane way that are out there in the African-American community that have a drug problem, whatever it is. And we know that crack cocaine is out there, and people still have problems with marijuana and alcohol. And, they're there. So, not to say that we are neglecting others, but at the same time, one drug just can't suck all the air out of the room. And we need to recognize that, hey, in this community, some other drugs may be prominent, and we need to make those efforts.
Okay, thank you. Judge Jackson, how do you measure the effectiveness of drug court? You send people there, right? Do they stay sober?
First, thank you, Judge Keenan. I appreciate you being here. Judge Morris spoke about it when she took the mic to begin the program, and she humbly noted the numbers and the success rate that the drug court has enjoyed, and I expect will continue to enjoy. And that's through her efforts and her whole team, Dr. Jackson included. I don't know what the county's numbers are right now. Could you speak to that, Judge?
We do, and I join you in thanking everyone again. When you take a look at people who have participated in drug court, which is for those clients diagnosed with addiction disorder, or recovery court, over which I preside, which are people who are diagnosed with addiction disorder and trauma, what we see is that there's, and Dr. B does our research, but 2/3 less recidivism. So it works. And we have very close supervision. We watch our clients very carefully. We follow the same model the Cleveland Muni Drug Court does. Have you been since 1998 with Judge Larry Jones starting out?
Have I?
I mean, no, Cleveland Muni Drug Court. 1998. So this is a model that has been proven, and our success rate is 2/3 greater at reducing recidivism, a goal that everyone shares, than non-drug court models. And what Dr. Darrell Jackson said is very important here. We do need our community to support judges that come up with alternatives to prison. Support us if we're trying to come up with a way of, this country incarcerates like nobody else. At this moment, there's over 2 million people in prison right now, 51,000 in the state of Ohio. And every year, the population equivalent of Baltimore, Maryland is released from prisons. This is not a forgotten population. This is your brother, your sister, your loved one, your neighbor. So if a judge is going to say, you know what, I'm not going to send you to jail, we don't want the public to get mad at us. We don't want that person coming back. But if you send someone to prison on a low-level offense for a finite period of time, what will happen when they get out? They will return to the same behavior and environment that they did before. So we've got to support these programs that offer alternatives, because we do see greater success rates, and everyone wants to see crime reduced and people restoring their lives.
Thank you. Attorney Antonio Nicholson, from your view as a public defender, how do you measure the effectiveness of the drug court?
Well, I've been with the drug court for about 2 years now, ever since I started at the public defender's office. And from my personal experience, I believe it's very effective. I measure it personally by recidivism and repeat offenders. But when I joined the drug court program, I figured out that I have an important role in this, because when I became an attorney, my biggest issue is to try to get people out of jail, try to get people, get an innocent verdict. But at the same time, when you see someone struggling from an addiction, it takes a special type of attorney to work with the drug court program. You have to get away from your normal values, because if you see somebody that's addicted and they should be in jail, because if you get them out, then they could overdose. You could find them on the newspaper the next day. You have to ask yourself, am I really doing this person justice if I advocate strongly to get them out of jail, or am I doing them more justice by asking the judge to screen them for drug court, even if they have to sit in jail for 32 days? There was a particular client that I had. She didn't want to do the drug court program at first. I told her when I did the intake interview, you need drug court. I usually look at someone when I can tell if they need drug court or not. She had to do residential treatment. There was no bed available for 40+ days. And every day she complained, and she was crying. She didn't want to be in jail and this and that. And I told her, you got to sit in jail until you get a bed. So she sat in jail. She finally got her bed. And now this girl is 20 months sober today. Cold turkey. So when you ask me to measure the effectiveness of the program, I look at personal stories like that. And trust me, I don't get paid anything extra to help with this program. But it's very rewarding when you see someone who's been traumatized by drug addiction since they were 15 years old and they're 25 now, and they finally kicked that habit because of our drug court, and we could proudly say that we saved this person's life.
Thank you. Reverend Dr. Rodney Thomas, as a pastor, can you answer the question, why is there still a stigma for people on crack, while society treats people on heroin like they're victims?
Well, I think there's a level of just pure judgmental, being judgmental across the board, whether it's with crack or heroin. A sense of anyone who's a drug user is someone that society can discard. And I think that surely in certain communities, whether it's white or black, in terms of how it's perceived on social media or public television or newscasters or police or the law enforcement officers, how they perceive that, or how their presentation of that across the news media has some level of what is worse, whether it's crack or heroin. But I think for those of us who are helping in this arena, whether we're prosecutors, judges, pastors, civic workers. There's not a difference between the two. They're our sons and daughters, our mothers and our fathers who are hurt by way of their addiction. And that's how I see it, and I think that's how it ought to be seen.
I would like to add to that.
Please do.
So the answer, in my opinion, to that question is that, so often, and I'm speaking from a personal standpoint when I'm speaking at this moment. So when you see individuals who are addicted to crack cocaine, they are often viewed as nasty, gutter, low-level individuals. When you see an individual who could possibly be addicted to heroin, they are seen as it's a disease, it's a mental health illness, it's a sickness. So often, individuals are looked at different because of their drugs of choice. Now, you often have clients who come to my office and say, oh, I'm not addicted to the stuff they're on. I'm not on crack. I'm not an alcoholic. I just pop pills. I just use heroin. So the discrepancies are wide range. And yes, Dr. Thomas, the media has a big part to play with it, but the stigma starts right here in our churches, in our families, in our homes, in our communities. And I'm speaking again from my own personal experience. My mom was addicted to crack cocaine, and that was the stigma that was attached to her.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to discuss that question? Dr. Moore? Martina Moore, would you?
Yeah, I wanted to add something to that. I think also that our medical associations have a lot to do with this as well. Now that opiate use disorder has been defined more of a medical disease, and we call this a medical crisis, but addiction, whether it's to alcohol, whether it's to cocaine or marijuana or K2 spice or anything else, it is a disease that is a medical condition that affects the person in the same way. And so I think we need to just dispel all the myths and just call a spade, and all of it is a disease, and all of it is a medical condition, regardless. The people still do the same thing. It still affects your family, it still affects your finances, your spirituality, your self-esteem, everything is affected. You could totally take a person and not know what drug they're using, and you could assess them and come up with the same bottom line, that they have the disease of addiction, and then all we have to do is add the particular drug to that. When I'm diagnosing individuals, we do see certain characteristics based on certain drugs, but anyone that has a disease of addiction, they look alike. They look alike. We all look alike.
Thank you. Judges, what are the state laws pertaining to someone caught with crack? And what's the difference with them being caught with heroin?
Good question.
Mr. O'Malley does.
You want to know?
And the prosecutor can also answer too.
It depends on
who wants to be first.
Well, heroin is punishable based on weight. Cocaine too. The laws evened out, fortunately, because crack cocaine used to be punished much more harshly, and that was viewed because it was an urban drug where the penalties were much more harsh. That evened out. So now I will tell you this. When somebody says, what do you use? I use cocaine. They might be very surprised when they come in and find out that they're testing positive for heroin or fentanyl. People don't really know what they're using when they go out to your neighborhood drug dealer and say, okay, I'm buying this or that. Cocaine overdose deaths have risen 100% in the last year. So if you take a look at who's dying, the gap is narrowing when you see this. So what we see with our clients, and we did get a grant to test this because what is killing people is that cocaine is now being mixed with fentanyl and other synthetic dangerous drugs that are very inexpensive. So you talk about the war on drugs. People can buy drugs on the internet and get them delivered, okay? There are factories that produce these synthetic drugs that are highly lethal. They're very, very inexpensive. So what someone is selling will now have a wider profit margin. And believe it or not, that drug dealer who is selling the stuff that kills people becomes the hot dealer. So I believe that our legislature really responds to what's happening right now. And that's why you'll see that fentanyl is becoming going up in the schedule, and perhaps our prosecutor can speak to this too. But where before that was not recognized as the scheduled drug that it is and punishable as it is, now it is. And those penalties, you'll see, and it'll start with the federal system, they're just gonna go up and up and up. But I wanna back up what the pastor said here and the question that came from someone about destigmatization. Every one of us can do something to recognize, as frustrating as it can be to deal with someone who is addicted. They could be stealing from you, lying to you, whatever it may be. You know, we have got to also realize that as long as we stigmatize the alcohol addict, the drug addict, they're not going to be able to have the same benefit at recovery as somebody who's sick with cancer, God forbid, or something else. So we need to support, and the support system does mean so much to that person in recovery. And I also want to say that a number of clients from our recovery court are here tonight, and I just want to say how nice it is to see you, and I'm very proud of you for all the successes that you've been enjoying because of your hard work.
And I would just like to add, because everyone doesn't know this, but possession cases are lower level crimes. So if you just possess a small amount, usually a user's amount, you usually get a felony 5. So 5th degree felony, sometimes 4th degree felony. People who are charged with selling or trafficking, it's a completely different thing. They are not eligible for drug court. And the main reason is because we don't want them selling to our people in recovery. And that happens, so we do have to make sure who's getting into our drug court, because they will have a steady supply of customers if we allowed them to do that. And so we do make a distinction between traffickers and users, but most people who just come in with possession, those are low-level felonies.
And I think it's critical too to really focus on what Judge Sinneberg has revealed, is that, you know, the drug dealers know that they are killing off so many of the heroin users, so they're starting to mix the fentanyl with cocaine. And they are going to be destroying a whole another segment of addicts. And, you know, my belief, again, is that people need the opportunity to recover. And quite frankly, you know, dealing in the county prosecutor's office, you know, every day we're dealing with very serious stuff. So my belief is that we need to focus on the serious stuff. When I have 38 homicides in the city of Cleveland through May 3rd, that's a huge issue to me. And as we all know, 90% of those victims are African Americans. And working with the police, I am doing my best to focus the resources on my office where they need to be, which is to get the individuals who are destroying neighborhoods through violence. Let's help the addicts, but really make our communities safe and get the people off who are destroying our communities through the random acts of violence that we read about and see every day on television.
Thank you. Our next question. Why aren't people on crack getting inpatient treatment? And how much does it cost? And I'm going to ask, do I have a volunteer? Okay. I'm going to ask.
I guess I should answer that since I'm the treatment provider. Well, because cocaine is not seen as, there's no medical necessity for them to be in residential treatment. Much like alcohol, clients who are on alcohol can die from alcohol. And even though we know people can die from crack cocaine, it's not seen as physically addicted. It's more seen as psychologically addictive. And so we have to show that there are other parameters in order to get them into residential treatment. And unfortunately, many of the insurance companies will not pay for residential treatment for cocaine. And especially they will not pay for detox for it at all. There's no one that will pay for that. We have found that there are some residential treatment centers through grants that sometimes that SAMHSA will fund, but those grants are now limited. We're seeing most of the grants now for opiate use disorders and very few grants for other populations. And so that is something that we are talking to our government about, is about opening up funding now for other drugs, Because honestly, we have so much money right now for opiates, we can't even use all the money. And those of us who are working in the treatment centers, we know that we have grants that we have not even used because they're earmarked just for opiates, and we cannot use them for the other drugs. So we are talking with our government and saying, please open up some of this funding for some of the other drugs.
Anyone else? Dr. Jackson, some people have mental health issues too, and they self-medicate with drugs. Do you offer special programs for those people?
So Cleveland Municipal Court is unique. We have several dockets, as Mr. Green outlined previously, that cover mental illness. Judge Groves, can you please stand? She's our mental health judge. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for those of the people who are in drug court and they find the drug problem is worse than the mental health problem, we do have mental health referrals, so they can be in drug court and still get some mental health counseling. I think the more counseling provides all that. They do everything.
Okay. I know there's a shot that they give people on what part? To the heroin. Do you have a shot developed for people on crack?
Ooh.
Like the Vivitrol?
So, no, but there is some research that's being done on some medications. It has not been approved yet, and Dr. Baldwin may be able to speak more to this, but it has not been approved yet, but it is still under research for crack cocaine, and we are hoping that the results are positive and effective quickly so that we do have something to treat cocaine addiction.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Yes, to follow up, as of June 2016, there is a cocaine shot that is in the final stages of approval. How widespread it will be, how it will be paid for by insurance companies or things like that is still unknown. However, it's went through the first various trials at the FDA and has shown effective, similar to 2 different types of medication-assisted treatment for opioid disorder. So the good news is it may be 20 years disregarded. However, they have responded in the medical community to begin looking at assisted treatments for cocaine use disorder.
Very good, thank you. Reverend Thomas, Reverend Dr. Thomas, Dr. Reverend Thomas, is the faith-based community part of the treatment programs?
I think on the local level, I think the faith-based community is a part of the recovery and treatment program, and I think that we would have to look at each individual church, but I would imagine that there's not a local pastor that does not have someone, if not in their families, within their own personal church, who's going through the addiction process with either a parishioner or a parent or a child of a parishioner who's going through it. One of the things about the person or he or she who's addicted, it's more than just them. I think the whole family is caught up in the cycle. And I think the pastors are involved in the treatment program, I think, in a holistic way. I think they're dealing with family members who are tired and who are hurt and who are frustrated. And I think they're dealing with children, sons and daughters, who are going through the process, who are struggling, one, to forgive themselves and to find forgiveness from their family members. And I think way before persons who are addicted deal with spirituality between their relationship and God, I think they're struggling with trying to find a relationship with the family members to whom they've hurt and whom they know that they've hurt. And I think we talked about this earlier. I think one of the problems is just society being judgmental toward family members. And I think that is highlighted in the spiritual realm, that I think the church can become judgmental toward brothers and sisters who have fallen off. And I think the church has to find a different way of addressing those issues. And I think the first way of doing that is embracing them and loving them, and not dealing with them as a person who's addicted, but someone who's broken and someone who's hurt and someone who's tired.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Moore, what is the difference between treatment and harm reduction? I was asking Dr. Moore.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Martina.
Okay.
Okay.
So harm reduction is a model that really started years ago. And Europe was the first country that really did well with harm reduction. And harm reduction is just us saying that we realize that everyone is not going to just stop using right away, but that we need to put some parameters in place to still help them to be safe, not to spread communicable diseases, to help them to live and possibly not die, as we are working on ways to get them to a point where they're not using any longer. So the first harm reduction model really was birth control. Where we came upon birth control was a harm reduction model, and so there's others from there. So we realize that everyone doesn't just stop using overnight, that sometimes it's a process, and within that process, harm reduction is there to help individuals to still live and not die and not spread diseases or not to cause more harm to their community throughout that process. So that's really the difference.
Thank you so much. Mr. Green, what's the difference between the Cleveland and the county drug courts?
Cleveland Drug Court, in order for somebody to come into the Cleveland Drug Court from the county level, the charges have to be turned into misdemeanors, and at which time the Cleveland Drug Court can take over the case. And the county drug court basically can hang on to those charges, and if the client does not successfully complete, then the felony can come back. So that's the major issue. Also, in terms of people that come to Cleveland Drug Court, we can also deal with misdemeanors and people that are referred to us directly from other judges. And if they see that they have somebody on their docket that has a drug and alcohol problem, you know, rather than them kind of, you know, circulating through the system, they say, well, you know, maybe it would be a good drug court referral, and let's have you do the program and then hopefully end the charges.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask one question before we go to the audience. Will there be more forums like this one? Are you planning more, Dr. Jackson?
Well, as of today, no, kidding. No, actually, I am. So what we try to do in the Greater Cleveland Drug Court is we look at the communities and we target the drug of choice in the community. So last year we did one, I think it was in the month of September, with Euclid and Euclid Municipal Court. We also did one in October, I think, with East Cleveland Municipal Court. And their drug of choice in that area is crack cocaine, marijuana, and PCP. I think Euclid's is heroin as well, opioids. And so we did several. We have a few others planned. I think the next one is targeted for Garfield.
Okay, thank you. I thought that was the last one, but we have one more. How can I help a crack user to stop using crack if he has been using it for 30 years? Anyone take it on?
Well, I think the thing is that, you know, just like you would help them or help anybody else, first thing you have to do is recognize and not enable them, because that's what a lot of times that we do. And enabling means that we think we're helping them, but what we're really doing is setting up for them to use again. They're going to have to take on the responsibility of their lives. Basically, we need to get away, and that's when tough love comes in. You know, we have to kind of step back. They're going to have to take a hold of their program. They're going to have to do the strong and hard work of recovery, which means that they have to get honest. They have to work the 12 steps. They have to get a sponsor. And for anybody that's loving that person, you have to get out of the way. And you also have to trust, like Reagan said, you have to trust but verify, okay? So when they're going to meetings, make sure you're looking at their slip. Make sure that you're calling their sponsor. Make sure that you're checking up on them repeatedly. And if they have a problem with that, you have to let them know that this is the box that they put you in, okay? Understand that. And when you stop doing that, that will be when you feel comfortable with them and their program. Okay, so that's very, very important.
Thank you.
Can I
Do
just
we have any
add to
questions
that
from
real
the
quick,
audience?
Judge?
I'm sorry.
Real quickly.
Yes.
I will say that we have had some success with people who've had long-term crack cocaine addiction since I've been there. And I think part of it is the fact that they are in drug court as opposed to just recycling in and out of just private recovery places. I think the drug court offers the structure and the accountability that some of those private facilities do not offer. So sometimes we do have to do some therapeutic incarceration, or we have to do something else. We have rewards and sanctions, and so the rewards and sanctions is what helps people get over those tough spots. And so, you know, a lot of those private places don't offer that. They don't have that kind of structure. They don't have to come to court every Wednesday and stand before a judge and account for their week. And so I think that's what makes us so successful as opposed to some of those others where people say, well, I checked myself in, I've been in and out of treatment centers, but it's the accountability and the structure. And so I think that we've done pretty well. We had some pretty hard-nosed people who we got graduated. So I think I owe it to that, we owe it to that structure and the accountability.
When you're in recovery and doing what you do, okay, there's a saying, and that is Steven Spielberg didn't have to go to the moon to film E.T., okay? In other words, you have some people that are very, very good, that are in recovery. You have some very, very good people that are not in recovery. You have some folks that are doing what they're doing, and they're just as capable as anybody else that's recovering. And a lot of times, sometimes we want to make that comparison, and that's not a fair comparison. Now, if somebody who was not in recovery was trying to teach somebody how to do drugs, then yeah, they would be at a disadvantage because they've never used drugs. But people who haven't used drugs are trying to show folks how to live sober, how to live a good, clean, honest life, and how to work a program. And that you don't need drugs to do, and that they know how to do. And we have a great panel, and we have people up here, and the only people that are in the court, you know, are absolutely qualified, whether they're recovering or not. They're very qualified.
Right.
Hi, everybody. My name's Mary, and I own Rally for Hope, and we're just a little bitty nonprofit, and we offer services to try to get people into rehab, into detox. You know, we're the little guys trying to fight the big fight. I know you guys had talked about some of these kids that are going to prison. And here's my issue with, we're sending kids that are on heroin into prisons. Some of these prisons have some of the most amazing recovery programs in there. Why is it not being mandatory that they have to go in and complete those? You know, because I'm from around the Mansfield area. Marysville, Richland, Mancy, they've got some really good programs in there, and a lot of the COs have brought it to my attention. Why are the judges not mandating that these young kids or anybody that's going through these prisons have to complete these programs? Vivitrol, you know, is a great thing. These kids go in there with a medical card. When they come out, they're going to have one. So why can't we take some of the money that's just sitting for opiates and start some kind of programs up in our prisons or in our jails to where we're giving these people a fighting chance? Give them the Vivitrol shot for a month or two. I know there's a lot of politics behind it. I really do. I deal with the state. I deal with the federal. So I know. But these are just questions that are brought to us from families, from COs, because they can say things like that to us to where they couldn't. But I mean, if we're going to say, yeah.
Senator.
Thank you. I appreciate what you have to say. I will tell you that because of the overcrowded conditions of our prisons, that right now with felonies of the 4th and 5th degree of possession cases, they carry a presumption of probation, not prison. There's no way in the world that we have the resources to support all the people that we are stuffing in prison with treatment. But I'll tell you what, when we get to the points we've heard earlier about how frustrated people become when they're waiting for a bed for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I agree with you. And I think that what we're trying to do is ask our county jail. And Prosecutor O'Malley, we've had conversations about this, he supports this. Rather than taking a person whose attention we have and saying, okay, well, you know, wait, sit there and just wait, why can't we go to them? And while they're waiting in the jail, bring in increased 12-step meetings. And a lot of people feel that they have lost connection with their higher power. We have them sitting in jail. Somebody asked the question, what do you do with somebody who's been addicted for 30 years? Well, you know, we get somebody when they've had the, believe it or not, fortunate intersection of getting involved in the criminal justice system. What about the person who doesn't get arrested? Okay, but not everybody goes to prison. No, if it's a 4th or 5th degree felony, you're not going to go to prison. And it's only becoming more and more rare for felons of the 4th and 5th degree to go to prison. So right now we have to figure out what to do to help people. And if someone does go, that's because they are an exception in the rule. And then what do you do when they get out? And that's where reentry is so important. Because if somebody goes back to the same environment with the same temptations and lures and no treatment, it's not going to happen. You go to prison on a low-level felony, you're going to be waitlisted to even go to a 12-step meeting. You're going to sit for 4 weeks to 8 weeks before you're even classified to your parent institution. So while, yes, the ODRNC, Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, is striving to help, and they are, there's just not enough there's more demand than supply. So now we have to think in terms of alternatives to sentencing, alternatives to prison, supporting community projects, and back to the fear that you heard Antonio talk about. He's a criminal defense attorney. He's saying, do I sound like I'm fighting for my client if I say the safest place for you right now is in a jail cell? I get that. We're afraid of people dying more and more because it's happening 2 times a day in Cuyahoga County, overdose deaths. So we have to support what we do have. Cuyahoga County Jail is the largest de facto mental health hospital in the state of Ohio. That's the reality. So now I think we have to go to where the people are. We're totally stuffed in the prison system. It has to be a community response. That's my thoughts on it.
Very nice. All right, all right.
God bless you all this evening. I'd like to thank y'all. You have to thank them, first of all, for coming out. I appreciate all that you're doing in the court system, all that you're doing in helping eradicate some of the problems that we're facing in our communities. I'm Jason Calloway. I have a faith-based organization for reentry for housing. And these are some of our clients. We were invited out. And I won't be voting for you for mayor. And thank you. I hope that we do some things that will contribute to helping our community. I thank you first and foremost. But we do need help in our community. We do need help. And a lot of that help has to happen with us. First of all, we thank you for coming out and allowing us to have this opportunity to come out, because I didn't know that this even existed, but we found out lately coming to court. And Judge Moore, I thank you for inviting us. And we have to take our community serious. We have to go out. We know who's dealing drugs. We know who's doing what in our communities. We know who. I've also been in prison. I've also rehabilitated my life. I've also faced life in prison. I've also turned my life around. So I thank you with all that you've done, because if it was that judicial system that helped me turn my life around, because I was a drug dealer. I did do some things wrong. I needed to go to prison. And also there are drug dealers out here uneducated that are selling poison, that are intentionally killing our people, that are killing people and are using these drugs and not, I don't even know how to explain senselessly how you could take another person's life while administering something, because you're not a physician, you're not a pharmaceutical institution. So how could you even give something that's lethal to another human being? So we will pray, and we will hopefully make it to the promised land. You keep doing what you're doing. I thank you, and I appreciate you all.
Hello, I'm Juanita. I just would like to say, as far as me being a user and have used drugs before, which I'm 60 days clean. But me being, which my judge, she might, you know, a human being, I do like to say, what some people don't know what people have been through. And I feel like my mother was on drugs for 22 years and not trying to, she got clean by the grace of God. She didn't ever go to no treatment facility, no meetings, no nothing, so I tried to do it her way. But I'm saying today that it's God's way, and it's only up to you to want it. If I don't want it, I'm not gonna stay clean. But let me say this too. There's nothing wrong, see, as being a person, you want love, like the young lady said right there, you want to feel love. Like if I don't feel loved in Nora's home or something like that, I don't want to be there. If I don't feel Judge Moore loves me, why would I want help? But me knowing that somebody do care other than my family, but it's just like, you know, you have to walk in my shoes, and I'm trying to get to the promised land. You know, one day at a time. It's only one day at a time, not yesterday or tomorrow. And with that, I pass.
Hi, my question is specifically for the prosecutor. In 2008, the Cleveland Plain Dealer had a 6-month investigation in which they found bias in terms of low-level drug offenses, and based on your race, whether you were given a drug treatment option or not, or whether it went down as a misdemeanor. And so my question to you is, what is the county doing to ensure there is no more race bias in the way people are being sentenced? And we've heard from the panel that we're having a difficult time finding people to be in the HEAP program. So I just want to know what's happened in the last 10 years, and can we be assured that there's no more racial bias in terms of who gets the opportunity to go to drug court? And I'll take my comments.
Certainly. You know, again, my position as county prosecutor is that we really need to focus on the serious crimes. I have a very diverse group for my grand jury unit. My criminal chiefs are both African Americans, Russell Ty and Diane Russell. They're both extraordinary lawyers. I'm proud to have them on my staff. So those are the individuals who are overseeing the charging. And they know my feeling is that let's get people into treatment programs. I have advocated that we have a high-risk drug court because I think we need to get more people the opportunity to seek recovery and to complete recovery. So I can tell you that my office, you know, I've been in office for 4 months, and I think we're on the right path. And again, my focus is, you know, right now, I think we have 16 or 18 juveniles sitting in the Juvenile Detention Center for homicide. I have 100 cases pending in the juvenile court for juveniles committing aggravated robberies. I've got 14-year-olds doing bank robberies. I've got 14-year-olds committing homicides. That's the world and that's the county we're living in. So as I allocate my resources are being allocated to try to keep people in their communities and their homes safe. And we are doing that by combating the serious crimes. And my feelings towards low-level drug cases are that we should do everything we can to get people on the road to recovery, regardless of their race, religion, sexual orientation, or any other guideline. So again, that's my feeling. And I think my community, as I campaigned over the last year when I was campaigning, is that when I would meet people, the discussions they had is, what are you going to do to keep us safe? What are you going to do to end this senseless violence that is occurring as somebody's driving down Kinsman or Lee Road or any other road, Detroit Avenue? We've got to keep our communities safe. But at the same time, I'm very cognizant of the drug issues. And again, my feeling is, let's get people into recovery.
All right, all right. One last question. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Excuse me, everybody. My name Anthony. It's just all right if I just thank y'all for saving my life. You know, I remember last year about this time, I just celebrated my first sober birthday, and I got 10 months clean, and I picked the first of the month because I knew what I was doing on the first each month, plotting, scheming. But I remember this time last year I was on the run, and I ended up in the psych ward I was ready to kill myself, and I got on my knees and I prayed, and I asked, because I was in the rooms before, but I didn't take nothing serious. I just was like, just showing up, dressing up the outside, not caring about nothing, you know. And I immediately, I ended up going to a nursing home. And when I got there, I said, man, I'm gonna give me a big book. A dietitian dude, I forget his name, he gave me a big book. And I got me a sponsor immediately. So when I turned myself in, I made sure I didn't come back, turn myself in empty-handed, because I really wanted to get sober this time. You know, so when I reported to Miss Marbury, bless her heart, I reported to her. I thought I was gonna get locked up that day. She told me to come back to court Wednesday. So when I came, you know, Judge Moore let me come back in. I'm forever grateful, you know. You know, and then I met my counselor, Fatima Brown, where she at back there. I remember when I first met her, she told me she was gonna be on me, but I never gave her a chance to, because I did everything I was supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to be the one stuck out from not doing the right thing. This is all about trying to teach you how to live again. That's the most important thing y'all trying to teach us, to be more responsible. I got my own place now, I pay rent, I pay bills now. You know what I'm saying? All thanks to y'all, you know. Hey, I want to thank Senator Brown, but I got another friend in here I wanted to really thank. I don't see her name, Helen Brown. You know, she never turned her back on me when I was out there. You know, she knew I was about the wrong thing. She always looked out for me, man. You know, I'm just so grateful. And about that video, though, I don't know if it was that music or what, it just hit me, you know. I mean, for real, you know what I'm saying? And I can never point my finger for somebody doing heroin or nothing, because I was a loser out there. It don't matter to me what drug you use. If your life unmanageable, you got to get some help. I pass.
All right. All right. All right, I'd like to call up, to wrap things up, Dr. Jackson, Judge Moore, and Pastor Thomas. Come on up here, wrap it up. And then after your comments, Pastor, you pray us out of here too.
Well, what did you all think? Is it good? Now, if everybody here goes home and tells 3 people what they heard, so we can get some more conversation going about all the other drugs that are out there, and we have, as Dr. Moore says, a lot of unspent money. You know, maybe we can redirect some of that money to crack cocaine and alcohol and all those other things that are needed so people can get some treatment for that. So, and this is news to me that they're working on a shot, because I've been asking about that for a few years, so I'm glad. And you know, for people who do not know, that Vivitrol shot is $1,200. It's $1,200. And so, you know, a lot of money goes into this recovery, and we don't mind spending it, but we want to make sure that at the end of the day, people appreciate it and they go away healthy, and the families are becoming whole, and that's why we are here. So thank you all for being here, and remember, go tell a whole lot of people so we can get it all the way up. Filter it up to the legislators, so they're the ones, the people with the purse strings.
First of all, I would like to thank our esteemed moderators. Could you please stand again? Mr. Jeff Johnson, Dr. Keenan, thank you for everything. Appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, I would like to also personally, again, and publicly thank the panel individually. I actually called upon these individuals, including the moderators, to say, hey, could you help us out? This is an issue that is wrecking our community, and we need to call some attention to it. Everyone agreed. There was no opposition, and I would like to thank you guys again for everything.
Thank you.
Also, as you all know, that events like this can't go on by itself. So at this moment, can I please thank Tanya Jones, if you could stand, Ed Flash Ference, Nyila Miller, Ramona Benson, and Mr. Richard Burrell. Thank you, guys. Also, the Greater Cleveland Drug Court treatment staff, if you all could stand, please. These are the individuals that work with our clientele day in and day out. They're all across the back walls. Dr. Bachman, Dr. Moore, they also help work with the treatment staff as well. So thank you guys for everything. Also, there were some young ladies from the Ophelia House. Could you guys please stand? These are special women. They are all in treatment next door. They are housed on the campus of this great church, the Ophelia House, and they're doing great things. But more importantly, about 2 or 3 months ago, me and Judge Moore, we got together and started the planning process of this event. And we called upon the Reverend Dr. Rodney S. Thomas to assist us. So, Dr. Thomas, could you please come up?
I just wanted to give you a token of our appreciation, the Greater Cleveland Drug Court for Outstanding Community Service Award 2017, presented to Imani Temple Ministries and Reverend Dr. Rodney S. Thomas.
Let us give all of these individuals another round of applause. I want to thank Judge Moore, and we want to thank Dr. Jackson for all of the work that they've done, and we want to thank all of you for coming out and giving us your time. And I want to thank all of the panelists for giving us their time out of their busy schedules. As we conclude, there is a repass in Hank Hall where the vendor tables are. So we'd ask that you would stop by the vendor tables and also go over to Hank Hall for the reception and the fellowship. One moment.
One last thing, sorry. So we have 2 major events coming up. Well, one major event from the Greater Cleveland Drug Court. On June 16th, we are sponsoring our 2nd Sober Ball. So the Sober Ball will be held at Crossroads House, which is in Bedford Heights, Ohio. The Sober Ball is to basically highlight the individuals that are in sobriety. These individuals are in this room. Some of them have never seen a senior prom. Some of them have never seen a social event. So this is an event so that they could highlight themselves for being sober. And they come all dressed up and look great. And we have a great time, a sober time. Also, the second thing is the Cleveland Council of Black Nurses is also having another symposium, which will be held on Saturday, June 10th, 2017 at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Middleburg Heights, Ohio. See me for more information if you would like to attend. Thank you.
Once again, we thank everyone for making this a wonderful symposium. Once again, we do make the announcement about the repass and Hank Hall and also the vendors table. May we just bow our heads for a moment of prayer through benediction. Father God, we thank you for all that you have done. We thank you for what we have heard, and we thank you for what has been shared. We ask that you give us your strength, your grace, and your glory, that we might make a difference. Not a difference just through theology, but a difference through impact ministry, that we might affect the lives of others by meeting them where they are. Now bless this event. Give us your strength, and may we all always go in your grace. Amen. Let the church say amen. And you may be dismissed.